Late in the third quarter on July 22, 2026, Indiana led Connecticut by more than 30 points. Saniya Rivers exchanged words with Caitlin Clark after a foul. Rivers told Clark that Connecticut had been shutting her down. Clark answered with 4 words. Look at the scoreboard. The officials gave both players technical fouls. The exchange lasted a few seconds. Then the game continued. Indiana finished with a 123-88 victory. The technical was Clark's 7th of the season. One more brings an automatic 1-game suspension. That number followed Clark into a post-game press conference that should have centered on Indiana's best offensive performance of the year. She had scored 27 points on 8 of 13 shooting. 5 of her 9 3-point attempts went in. She added 11 assists, 1 steal, and 1 blocked shot while playing just over 27 minutes. Indiana scored 70 points before halftime, setting a franchise record for points in a half. Its 123 points established another franchise record. The Fever shot 61.6% from the field, made half of their 22 3-point attempts, and recorded 29 assists on 45 baskets. Clark, Kelsey Mitchell, and Aliyah Boston combined for 72 points. Mitchell scored 23. Boston added 22 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, and 3 steals. Connecticut never found a reliable answer for any part of Indiana's main trio, but the number attached to Clark after the game was 7. Under Women's National Basketball Association rules, a player is suspended for 1 game after an 8th unsportsmanlike technical during the regular season. A fine comes with the suspension. Every second technical after that threshold produces another 1-game ban. Once the league has reviewed a call, the rule doesn't make room for context. A technical from a physical confrontation occupies the same column as one assessed for words. The standings don't separate a player who threatens an opponent from one who tells that opponent to check the score. Indiana entered the All-Star break at 17-10. Its next game is July 28th in Seattle. Portland follows on July 31st, then Minnesota on August 2nd, and Las Vegas on August 6th. That sequence gives the 7th technical consequences before another whistle is blown. If Clark receives number 8 in Seattle, she misses Portland. If it comes against Portland, she misses Minnesota, one of the league's strongest teams. If it happens in Minnesota, Indiana hosts Las Vegas without its point guard. New York, Dallas, Atlanta, and Toronto appear later in August. Every game now carries the next game inside it. The suspension risk would be easier to absorb if Indiana were winning through a system that happened to include Clark. Recent results point somewhere else. The Fever's offense has begun operating through her decisions, and that change has arrived with its strongest stretch of the season. Against Seattle on July 17th, Clark scored a franchise record 45 points and handed out 10 assists. It was the first game in league history in which one player recorded at least 40 points and 10 assists. Indiana won by 3. The following night, Indiana beat New York by 20. Mitchell scored 33 points while Clark's passing pulled the Liberty's defense from one pressure point to another. 4 days later, Connecticut faced the same problem and surrendered 123. Those were 3 straight wins, each produced in a different way. Clark carried the scoring load against Seattle. Mitchell led against New York. The full starting core overwhelmed Connecticut. The person deciding where the ball went remained the same. Through 22 games in 2026, Clark had averaged 20.7 points and 7.8 assists. By the Connecticut game, Indiana had climbed to the top of the league in scoring and offensive efficiency, averaging more than 94 points. An assist average only captures completed passes that lead directly to baskets. It doesn't record the second defender dragged several feet beyond the 3-point line. It misses the weak side rotation caused by a drive, the early pass that begins a sequence, and the space created when a defender refuses to leave Clark near the logo. Indiana can replace her position in the lineup for one night. It can't reproduce that arrangement of the floor. Boston benefits when Clark turns the corner and forces the opposing center to choose between stopping the ball and protecting the rim. Mitchell benefits when defenders arrive late after leaning toward Clark. Other shooters get cleaner catches because the defense has already made its first decision somewhere else. The offense against Connecticut showed the mature version of that relationship. Clark didn't need 25 shots, she took 13. Boston attempted 14, while Mitchell took 16. All 3 scored at least 22 because the ball reached each player before the defense recovered. Clark also committed 6 turnovers, and those belong in the account. Her highest-risk passes don't always survive. Indiana accepted the mistakes, because the same aggression produced 11 assists and a steady supply of open attempts. That balance is what the Fever would lose during a suspension. A replacement guard wouldn't only need to match Clark's 27 points. She would need to make Boston, Mitchell, and the rest of the lineup operate with the same space and timing. Nobody else on Indiana's roster has shown that capacity. The danger didn't begin with the scoreboard exchange. Clark received her 5th technical on June 22 during Indiana's win over Phoenix. Dewana Bonner and Clark became tangled near the free throw line. Words followed. Other players entered the confrontation, and officials assessed 5 technical fouls across the two teams. Clark said hers was for clapping. Afterward, she called the decision ridiculous and suggested everyone should choose the future game she would miss if clapping continued to produce technicals. She said she planned to keep playing with emotion and passion. Indiana reportedly challenged the call, but it stayed on her record. Fever coach Stephanie White treated that incident as both an officiating issue and a matter of responsibility. White acknowledged that some technicals grow naturally from the energy of competition. She also said there were others the team could do without, and that Clark needed to stay aware of her total. The distinction mattered. Challenging a weak technical after a game and preventing the next one during a game are different jobs. Indiana could argue the first, while still demanding the second. Clark's 6th technical arrived against New York on July 18th. After a screen by Jonquel Jones and a no call, Clark objected. The official assessed the penalty following her reaction. White said another conversation would follow. She joked that Indiana needed to be strategic about using technical fouls, though the arithmetic beneath the joke was plain. 18 regular season games remained at that point, and Clark was 2 technicals from a suspension. 4 days later, the margin became 1. The 7th differed from the previous 2. It wasn't an extended argument with an official. Clark was responding to an opponent during a game Indiana had controlled from the first quarter. Her 4-word answer described what everyone in the arena could see. The scoreboard supported her. Indiana led 70-46 at halftime. Clark had scored 21 of her 27 points before the break. Rivers and Connecticut had not shut her down by any standard use of the phrase. Officials gave technicals to both players and treated the exchange as mutual taunting. A strict application of sportsmanship rules can support that decision. It can also be questioned because competitive speech is part of professional basketball, and the interaction never became physical. Neither position changes the total unless the league removes the penalty. And that's the uncomfortable part for Indiana. The team can believe a call was too severe and still absorb the result. Clark can be right about the scoreboard and still miss a future game. A coach can defend her in public, then spend the next practice asking her to walk away sooner. The league has removed technical fouls in other cases. Paige Buchers and Janelle Salayan reportedly had clapping technicals rescinded earlier in the season. Clark's 5th remained after review, which suggests the league considered her clapping part of the wider confrontation rather than an isolated gesture. The 7th will invite the same examination. Video shows a short exchange. Officials were close enough to hear it, and both players were penalized. Whether the league keeps or removes the technical will show how narrowly it defines taunting when the language is brief and non-threatening. There's another part of this now. Clark's relationship with officials has become part of the way opponents can approach her, whether teams discuss it openly or not. They know she reacts to contact and missed calls. They know she communicates throughout games. They also know the next technical has more value than the previous 7 because it removes her from an entire contest. An opponent can't produce a technical on command. Still, there is an incentive to test the boundary. A defender can crowd Clark after a whistle, continue a conversation, or make an ordinary foul feel a little more personal. Clark then has to decide whether answering is worth placing the following game at risk. The burden isn't equal. An opponent carrying 1 or 2 technicals can engage without facing the same consequence. Clark enters every exchange with 7. Indiana's staff can prepare for that. A teammate can step between the players before the conversation continues. White can substitute Clark after heated possessions. Objections can be directed through a captain or assistant coach. None of those measures guarantees safety because an official still makes the decision in the moment. The most dependable adjustment belongs to Clark. She can keep the emotion while shortening what happens after the whistle. That sounds easy from outside the game. It's harder for a lead guard who handles repeated contact, makes decisions on nearly every possession, and operates under uncommon attention. Clark's frustration didn't appear from nowhere. She has taken hard fouls, absorbed off-ball contact, and been involved in incidents the league later reviewed. Phoenix forward Alyssa Thomas received a 1-game suspension in June after the league upgraded contact to Clark's throat. No foul had been called during the play. Adam Silver later said the league needed to improve its officiating, even as he described the wider debate around Clark as political. Those events explain part of the distrust. They don't exempt Clark from conduct rules. Indiana's problem is more specific. The Fever don't need Clark to become quiet. Her communication, edge, and refusal to retreat are tied to the way she competes. They need her to recognize the instant when expression stops serving the current possession and starts threatening the schedule. The line may be placed unfairly on a given night. It remains there. Clark's technical total also complicates the broader debate over protection. When a player disputes enough calls, each new moment is filtered through the reputation created by the earlier ones. Officials may expect a reaction before it arrives. Fans see each whistle as another example of bias. Opponents see a pressure point. The original play disappears beneath everything surrounding it. That cycle doesn't help Indiana. The Fever have spent much of Clark's professional career building a team capable of using her range and passing vision. Against Connecticut, the result was 45 made baskets, 29 assists, and the highest point total in franchise history. Clark, Mitchell, and Boston looked less like three separate scores and more like one connected offense. Connecticut was overmatched, so one result can't settle Indiana's championship prospects. The Sun entered with 7 wins. Stronger defenses will close passing lanes sooner and punish Indiana's 13 turnovers more severely. The schedule after the break supplies that test. Seattle comes first, Portland follows. Minnesota and Las Vegas wait after that, with only 3 days separating the Portland game from the trip to Minneapolis. Missing one game wouldn't decide Indiana's season by itself. A 44-game regular season leaves room for isolated losses. Seeding races, though, are often decided by margins smaller than the one Clark now carries beside her name. The Fever were 17-10 when the break began. Minnesota, Las Vegas, Golden State, Dallas, and Indiana had all established themselves near the upper portion of the standings. Home court position and playoff matchups remained unsettled. Indiana had found momentum just as Clark's margin for another reaction disappeared. There's no need to predict that number 8 will arrive. Clark could finish the regular season with 7. White's conversations may work. Teammates may help. The league could also remove the Connecticut technical after review. Until one of those things happens, the condition stays attached to every game. When Clark launches a 30-foot three, the visible risk is a missed shot. When she threads a pass through 2 defenders, it's a turnover. Indiana accepts those basketball risks because of what they can create. The risk after a whistle produces nothing for the offense. That's why the Connecticut technical matters more than the exchange itself. Look at the scoreboard didn't affect a game Indiana won by 35. Its potential effect moved forward, from a finished blowout into a road trip that hadn't begun. Clark left the Connecticut game with 27 points, 11 assists, and her 7th technical foul. Indiana returns from the All-Star break on July 28th at Climate Pledge Arena in Seattle. Clark will begin that game 1 technical away from suspension.